On today's episode of Modern Catch Up, where I talk about a recently released film I am just now getting to, I'm reviewing Queer, which is directed by Luca Guadagnino, and starring Daniel Craig as Lee, a middle-aged American who's living in some solitary state in Mexico City during the 1950s. We follow Lee as he meets what he believes is his dream guy, who is also probably half his age, and what transpires in the relationship and Lee's inner feelings. I have a mixed history with Guadagnino's films. I did not like Challengers, but thought the 2018 remake of Suspiria was pretty good. I think his biggest accomplishment as a director is being able to film very abstract and beautiful images, but he leaves me in a constant aggravated state when it comes to getting into the mind of his characters. With Suspiria, I understood that the visualization was the whole point, because the original was just as dreamlike as his remake, so I was willing to accept it. But with his original films, I always feel a very cold shoulder with his movies, and I sometimes end up rejecting them altogether. The thing I need to praise first in this movie is the set design, costume design, and production design. Queer is one of the best looking films I have seen in a good while. It is shot like a 1940s film noir for the first two acts, and it looks extremely authentic. The cars, the clothes people wear, and the way the lights shine into the windows like they would in those old noir films are simply beautiful. The cigarettes these characters smoke look like the old packaging. The look of the bars our lead character inhabits look authentic. Everything about the physical look of this picture is incredible. I praised to high heaven the look of Conclave starring Ray Fiennes when I reviewed it last year, and I think that Queer looks even better than that film. Daniel Craig is unbelievable in this movie. Like most people, I know him primarily as James Bond and the two Knives Out movies, so seeing him transition from those characters into this one makes you wonder how he did it. I felt like I was looking at someone completely different than those characters. Craig has those piercing eyes that help sell the material in this movie better than I think any other actor could. There's a sequence about an hour into the movie where you see him cooking up some heroin, and you can see the orange-stained fingers from all the cigarettes he has smoked. And the paleness in his face, in stark contrast with those vibrant eyes, shows you that we are following a lost soul who is clearly in a great amount of pain. I never once said to myself, I'm watching Daniel Craig play a character. I believed he was Lee within the first 2 minutes of the movie starting. This may be the best pure performance Craig has ever given. Lee is charming, but clearly an outsider. He's outwardly social, but you can see that his soul is rotting. This won't transform Craig's career like James Bond did, but this is a remarkable character acting job by him. I can't praise his performance enough. For the first hour of this movie, we follow the character Lee going from bar to bar, picking up and hitting on strangers, and the amount of liquor that is consumed in this movie may be the most I have seen in any movie since maybe Cocktail with Tom Cruise, and even this movie may have it beat. It's a lot of alcohol, and I felt like I was maybe getting drunk just from watching this film. When Lee meets this dream guy named Eugene, we start to have some kind of vesting interest in a relationship, as we see that Lee really likes this guy, and maybe even loves him, but the feelings are likely not being returned, and he is being viewed as a sex buddy from Eugene. There's a sequence where they go to a movie together, and the film visually shows you that Lee wants to touch and caress him by having fade shots of Craig imagining that he is doing those things. Eventually, when the feelings are reciprocated on a physicality level, Lee starts becoming attached maybe a little too much, and this leaves Eugene maybe feeling like he is losing his freedom, so he begins to brush Lee off. This is where I have to put the brakes on, however, and say that this movie is trying to be great, but I think it falls over itself with too much imagery, and I think the screenplay becomes confused for long stretches of the runtime. What I mean by that is we spent almost an hour of the runtime just following our main character without even hinting about what it is about. This is one of those films that is for die-hard cinephiles. It's very artistic, expressionistic, and relies on its images so much that it can leave a lot of mainstream viewers feeling like they're watching a cold picture. You don't learn what the film is about until over halfway through the runtime. Once these two characters head on a trip through South America, the film sort of tips its hand a little bit, but by then it starts becoming surreal with its visual representations that I began to lose the narrative thread, and the film felt like it was just becoming all style and no substance. I love the imagery that is displayed in the last 30 minutes, and while I knew what they were going for here, it didn't ring authentic in my mind because I wasn't getting any insight into either of our characters. I knew that the relationship was viewed as pragmatic for the younger Eugene, and a feeling of wanting to love comes from Lee. Unfortunately, I think that Guadagnino is going for more pastiche surrealism than he maybe should have for how simplistic this story actually is. While I love the noir look of the first two acts, I could tell that Luca was paying homage to them, and by the last act, where we are basically borrowing from films such as Apocalypse Now, and especially 2001: A Space Odyssey, all I was doing is appreciating the callbacks, but forgetting why the images were there in the first place. This movie, I think, loses its narrative thread once it begins to change its styles and goes for hallucination-style filmmaking. It's the same problem I've had with most of Lucas films, and this one is no exception, unfortunately. I am so incredibly mixed on this movie because I love the visual style of it, and the performance by Daniel Craig, but I think the film loses itself to self-indulgence at some point and cares more about its art than it does the characters. If you like visually stunning films, then I highly recommend this movie, but if you want a cohesive narrative, this will probably infuriate you and leave you feeling empty. I fall somewhere in the middle because I know that this is a self-awakening and lost soul kind of story, but it meanders in its own beauty so much that it forgets to be a movie. I also must question one style decision, and that is the choice of some of the music. The soundtrack itself is really good, done by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. It's more the first few song choices that are strange to me. The film takes place in the 1950s, but the first song we hear is a cover of All Apologies by Nirvana, and immediately follows that up with actual Nirvana singing Come As You Are. Why didn't you just do Nirvana for both songs? But more importantly, why is there contemporary music in a film that takes place 40 years before those songs were written? And Nirvana is one of my favorite bands. It's an odd stylistic choice that didn't hit with me. However, I am so glad I saw this film, and to be honest, I want to see it again to see if it grows on me because I can see that happening. But on initial reaction, I am split almost down the middle and can't quite recommend it. But I'm sure that if you love art films, this will probably be a movie you will enjoy. I say check this out and make up your own mind, and maybe you will discover something I haven't seen yet. And if you do, please tell me in the comments what I missed on this first go around. I give Queer a very reluctant and close 2.5 stars out of 4. It just seems like a style over substance film, but maybe that's just me. Okay, so Queer, have you seen it? What did you think of it? Even though I leaned on a negative, I think Daniel Craig deserves an Oscar nomination for this movie. So please don't watch this thinking I believe this is a bad film because it isn't, and is unlike any film I have seen in a good long time. Anyway, if you like this, please like and subscribe. Here's links to my other videos. Follow me on social media if you like, and until next time, I am Ghost.